you can get some insights again on how children learn bias and prejudice, or don't, or learn not to be. Anybody want to share theirs? Yep.
Oh,
okay.
All I would say is I'm very picture challenged, so
You don't have to show us your picture, that's
yeah,
right.
there is no picture to share. So I was remembering a time when I was 9, we moved from the United States up to Canada, up to Montreal, and the place that we had moved from in Connecticut was very homogenous. Everybody looked the same. And so when we moved up to Montreal, to the city, I went to a public school. It wasn't just K through 12, but it went into there was like adult learning there as well. So ages, huge range of ages, and so that shocked me. But people from all countries, all races, many different cultures, all went to this school called Feinberg's for Education. It was public downtown. Got to take public transportation at 9, coming from a little suburb town in Connecticut. It was a pretty just exciting experience. But after my first year at that school, my parents moved me to a private school because of the curriculum and what was taught there, and we were going to be moving back to the United States. And my mom, being a public school teacher, said this isn't working out. And as soon as I started at the private school, first thing I noticed, so everybody here looks like me. Everybody here looks like they probably identified as white, which that wasn't how I termed it at that time. And I wonder, here's my wondering, I noticed it right away, and I didn't understand, and I didn't ask my parents, and I purposely didn't ask them why is everybody the same here, and I'm really curious how they would have explained it to me, and how that might have helped start my understanding of social justice, of social differences, because I didn't ask them, and I don't know. I don't know what the response would have been. But so it wasn't that it was one person, but I was just noticing that.
Totally different.
So the way that things are structured here, this is for people who, when everybody looks different, this is where you go. And now here, everybody physically appears to be the same. And there were a lot of similarities in terms of culture as well. So.
Did you feel like you shouldn't ask?
Yeah, there probably was some of that because I didn't.
Yeah.
At that age, I wasn't super communicative with my parents. I was already like, I don't like to ask. But I'm sure that there was some sense of there's something not right here, and I shouldn't ask about it.
Just thinking of the way that we teach kids taboos, like sexuality, just by never mentioning it.
That's right.
You're telling them this is off limits.
Well, again, it's something that from the time we are little toddlers and separating based on color, and do you notice this? I mean, it was something that visually, it's so apparent, and it was so apparent that wasn't talked about or expressed, or, hey, do you notice how different the students are in this school is in the environment? That wasn't brought up, so I'm sure now that you ask that there was some degree of, we don't talk about it.
And then you brought up that point, because I just put that up. That's the whole colorblind theory. That it just, if you don't talk about it, then they believe children will not be prejudiced and assume that every difference, and they would assume that differences is bad. If it's not talked about, that means it's bad. It's like, you don't talk about sex because it's bad. That's kind of what the information a lot of children might get. So that's that whole theory that you don't ask, you don't say anything. Okay. Any other stories you want to share? Thank you. And you probably have never thought about that until we do this.
No.
No.
Not just terms. Yeah.
No.
I was a lot older when I noticed things, and it was actually noticing how white America is, coming from somewhere that was very diverse. So when I was a child, I don't know if I can't pinpoint anything thinking specifically, like when I noticed that someone was from a different culture or race. I noticed different cultures going to those homes, hanging out and playing with children, and and the only time I can think of the first exclusion, this is crazy because I was 16, but it was when I actually left New York City on a road trip with 2 other people, one who was Bolivian and one who was Argentinian. And I didn't actually experience anyone or I should say notice, because I'm sure that there was things that happened beforehand, but once we left New York and we were out of that bubble,
Yeah.
I want to call it,
Going into the Midwest.
yeah, or the South,
Yeah.
I was like, oh.
Were they
Kinda
treated
scary.
differently when you stopped?
I was actually approached by someone in, I can't remember where we were in the South, we were on a road trip. And I was approached by someone and asked why I was with them.
Oh, God.
And it had never occurred to me until that moment. I was like, they're my best friends. What do you mean, why am I with,
Yeah.
you know? And then it, like, with a little help from them also, they're like, hello. I'm like, oh,
They knew.
wow.
They knew.
You know, it took, yeah.
experienced
Of
that
course,
there.
they had, and I hadn't seen it.
Right.
You know, like I didn't, but I was 16. I wasn't.
Yeah.
Just
Little. It took you
2,
that
3,
long.
4-year-olds we're talking about. I was a lot older, but and then I was like, oh, now this is scary. And that
Yes.
weird word. And felt very vulnerable at that point, and terrified for my friends. You know, but yeah, that's what came to my mind.
I also grew up in New York, and when I was about 13 or 14, I had, similar experience where I was on the other side, like your friends were, because in New York, you do take it for granted, because the diversity is such a,
Yeah.
it's just part
Everywhere.
of life. But we went to California to visit family, and then from California, we took the bus and came to Oregon to visit family here. And I remember on the way, the bus stopped in a rest area, like in a small town. We got out and we went inside to buy things, and everybody was staring and we didn't understand. And I remember the guy at the register was like, "You need to get back in the bus. Yeah, you need to get back in the bus."
Scary.
Yeah, and I didn't understand.
Why?
What?
How
Why?
old
Yeah.
were you?
It's like 13, 14. Yeah.
That's a
That was in the
exclusion.
80s, yeah.
In the 80s.
I think I was in Alabama now. I'm thinking about it.
Oh, yeah.
Where that happened specifically. And we were on a Greyhound bus actually, because our van had broken, whatever. But we were on a Greyhound bus in a Greyhound station when that happened, and I was just thrown off by it. Like, it was one of those eye openers. Like, holy cow, what am I missing here?
Yeah.
And I'm having a hard time with my children having grown up somewhere that was so diverse.
And they're not.
And now they live in Southeast Portland. And it's like, well, that's my fear. Like, how do I approach this with them when they're not necessarily engulfed in any kind of
There's another book, it's aimed at teachers, but it's called What If All the Children Are White?
Yes,
And
right.
it
That's
talks
one of the
about
resources I'm going to give you.
doing social justice
Yeah, it's a
work
really good
in
book.
classrooms.
Yeah,
All
really.
the kids are white, like, how do you address them?
I mean, PCC's preschool, though, is more diverse than most preschools that we looked at. Or at least that's what I observed. But
It's our goal.
Yeah, that's right.
the what?
It's
That's
our
the goal.
goal, so
Yeah.
it's intentional.
Yeah, it's obvious when you look at preschools.
Yeah.
You look at people.
And the staff too. I mean,
And the staff
we see
too.
the value of the
Yeah.
center.
What is part of our mission, anti-violence curriculum?
And
It is
hopefully
doing
the
social
faculty
justice
is
work.
getting that, but it's slowly happening. Faculty are insisting. Any other stories? Anybody want to, any guys want to share any stories?
About racism, you mean? Story about racism.
About your
Yeah,
personal
when you were
experience.
just-
Personal experience, yeah.
White or black or another?
Any-
it's about
Anyone,
religion.
yeah.
Any.
Yeah, I watched a video that was about Muslims family have a flight and the pilots come to them and told them you need to get out from the pilot without any reason, just for the safety reason. Yeah, this happened in America. I don't remember where it was exactly. It's the state or something. That's what's out for.
Thank you. Any other stories?
I've been thinking about this recently, and I can't remember any one scenario. And I do realize that my mom was training us in social justice early, so I don't ever remember being shocked, especially. But I do remember that the conversation was ongoing. my mom would point out and say, hey, who's getting picked on? Why is this happening? What kind of things are they saying? How do you back them up?
Wow.
And so for me, this wasn't anything, it wasn't ever new. It was always a conversation since forever. I had an experience at 22 where a friend from the States met my cousin who was raised in the States and looks very white. And after they met, we were in Costa Rica, he said to me, he's like, oh, is anybody else in your family white? Oh. I was like, what do you mean? It's like, yeah, is anybody else in your family white? I just didn't get it. It took me like 5 times, and then so, and on my paper is, like, what am I?
Yeah, right.
Like, can we do the skin
Yeah,
check? Like,
right.
if I'm not white, what am I? I'd never thought of myself as not white. And in Costa Rica, I am white. And so it depends on the context. Like, yes,
Yes,
I
that's
am
right.
white. I am European descent. And yet, I come from a colonized country, still exploited. And so the situation's going to be different. But I had never even considered that somebody would even think of me as not white. And I think I had a nice, good bout of white fragility going on and saying, no, I claim the status. The status
that's
is
right.
mine. I want it.
Yes, you do. Like all the other white kids.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I am
don't wanna
white.
be-
What are you talking about? Brown. I'm not brown.
Wow.
Well, I mean, I think I've had a lot of similar experiences with the bicultural piece, but I remember in high school the experience of, I had a really diverse group of friends, and that was the first time that I realized how easily I could pass. You know, because I had a very diverse group of friends, and I could move between groups very easily. And I used to think, oh, it's just because I'm so social, you know, and I'm amazing. But then I realized it wasn't about that. And I think that was, and I didn't understand it in a really the social justice context. I knew something was screwed up, but and it felt uncomfortable to me. And next to the picture I drew was because my Brazilian grandmother was very dark. And, you know, so, but you know how it is, grandmothers very quickly could change. And I didn't have like a sense that was weird growing up. Again, so my friend group was very diverse, and I felt like I fitted with them. And then I would go over here, and I was fine over here. And then I realized that group couldn't
They couldn't
really pass over to this group. And it was an awareness without really having the words. And it was only when I was in college and really studying it that I had more of a aha moment of like, holy, that's what it felt.
Yeah, this issue of passing is big.
And it's uncomfortable because, like, I identify as being Brazilian, but it's sometimes uncomfortable because those closest to you, and just like you said, my cousin actually looks pretty dark, so he doesn't pass at all. So and when he was in this country, he decided to go back to Brazil because he didn't like dating here because he wasn't the way he was viewed. As like a foreigner or outside or whatever.
I stopped over there to get some papers because while we're doing this, so these are quotes, and I'm just going to pass them around and for different people to read. These are quotes of what actually children have said in the study that Louise Durbin Sparks did in the early 90s. So if you just want to read, these are things children say as they're talking to each other, and these were teachers that were really listening carefully. So do you want to read yours out loud? Just
Tiffany, whose skin is light brown, ponders whether she would want to sit in the back of the bus. Is her skin dark enough? Finally, Tiffany firmly asserts, I'm black, and anyway, all this is stupid. Everyone should sit wherever they want to. I would just get off the bus and tell them to keep their old bus.
yes. Can you want to read yours?
2 5-year-old white boys are playing in the sandbox. A Vietnamese boy asks to join them. Nah, you can't play with us, you Chinese, they chorus, pulling their eyes into a slant.
Doll at 4.5, playing at home with his Lego set, says to his mother,
Not living well.
You know, You know, all the Lego people in the set are white people. Why?
Good question. Do you want to read yours?
A 2.5-year-old Asian child refuses to hold the hand of a black classmate. It's dirty, he insists. At home, after bathing, he tells his mother, now my hair is white because it's clean.
Okay. A kindergarten teacher shows the children a magazine picture entitled Brides of America. All the women pictured are white. She asks, what do you think of this picture? Sophia responds, that's a silly picture. My mom was a bride and she's Mexican.
So that's confusing. Want to read yours?
After hearing the story of Rosa Parks and the Montgomery bus boycott and role-playing the bus sequence, 5-year-old Karen turns to her friend Tiffany and explains, her voice expressing both indignation and wonderment. Tiffany, you wouldn't be able to sit next to me. I don't like that at all.
You want to read yours?
I did. Oh.
No, I don't have.
Okay, all right. So,
One morning, 4.5-year-old April arrives at the child care center, hiding a stereotypic Indian warrior figure. Kiyoshi, another 4.5-year-old, says to her, "Don't let Suzanne see that. It will hurt her feelings." Suzanne, a staff member, is Cherokee.
so this kind of goes along with some of the experiences that you had. So, so a couple other definitions. White is right is a way of denying responsibility for perpetrating the racial system. And this is just infused in our society and everyday experiences.
Can you talk more about that? What is white is right?
White is right, meaning the way that our system is set up is that that's the right way. So the way, and you could start even in the family home. So the way most white people will sit and talk, and a lot of it's European, British European, if it comes back from Britain and the imperialization of that. So it's the way that white people set up their table, and so their mores as well as
What's
broader,
valued.
and their values then broader into the way that if they go to church, the church going, and then even broader the way the classrooms are set up. So it's the whole structures. It starts again in that micro experience, and then the meso and the macro. So, and that's the right way, and the wrong way is any other way. Is
An
that
advertisement and the media is a very powerful tool that shows that. I mean, my daughter points that out, and like your family, I try to discuss racial issues with my children since they were in high school, and so they identify it. So that now that when they see Land's End or Gap advertisement and it's always portrayed a certain look, they do question it and they identify why it's happening. Like, oh, I know, they're noticing it, so that my goal is for them to recognize that it's happening so that it's not internalized. And in television, the representation of family in television, it's changed a lot over the years, but even like from the 80s when my husband and I talked about when we first came here, the messages of who African American people were very different. It's still negative, but it was and Native Americans, and we didn't know about American history, and the messages that we received from the media was so incredibly biased.
And it spreads into religion. So
Yeah.
the Europeans who came over here were white Christian people. And so then it's the Christian holidays that are advertised and the ones that are celebrated in schools. And it's very, and that's part of the white is right, is the Christian belief system.
I don't know if this is jumping ahead to how I'm not part of this presentation, but so that's why a lot of the work that we do with children is giving them counter messages, giving them other messages, and a lot of them because they have 5 million messages from the world around them,
second.
from the social
Yeah.
media, from everywhere they go. You know, like your story of being able, the little girl who saw the, post, billboard. I mean, they already know that stuff, and they know it. I mean, that's why they already recognize McDonald's. They already recognize. I mean, by the time they're 3, they already know all of that stuff. They've already internalized a lot. So some people will say, well, why not put up a picture of a nice white family also in your classroom?
They
They
already
already have 5,000
That's
of
right.
those. They don't
They're already
need more.
exposed to it.
They need more of the other, and seeing families being normal and looking different from theirs, not being, this is a special, amazing family that lives on the other side of the world, and, it's just saying, no, they're normal families, and, normalizing it for them.
And that's the same example you did with the candy. It's equity and equality, the difference between equity and equality. Equal is not equity, and that's pretty powerful.
I use an analogy in class from Beverly Tatum, and she talks about how racism is like traveling on the walkway at the airport. It's going in this direction. So if you don't pay attention, you're just going to get carried along. You could walk, and then you go really fast. So those are the active racists. But if you're just a passive racist, then you're just kind of flowing along. The only way to do away with it is to walk really fast in the other direction. Otherwise, you get carried away.
Because then you're agreeing with it. If you're quiet, you're agreeing with it. We're moving into the adult role, and then we're going to talk a little bit about what would be the next step for you. What would be something that you can do to make a change? So remember, and this is from the first slide that talked about when we become biased or prejudiced. We are all biased and prejudiced. All of us are. By nature of being human beings, we're biased and prejudiced, conscious or unconscious. We are. So remember that our daily model attitudes and our identity is verbal and nonverbal. Adults teach children by commission and omission, especially when you don't talk about it, then we are teaching children to be racist. If we don't talk about it, we are teaching them to be racist. It's pretty powerful to think about that. Kind of what we were saying about the moving stairs. And adults are poorly prepared to deal with emotionally charged stuff. And especially if you're a white American, you could have talked about your mom never got mad, remember? And that was just kind of, that's part of the European upbringing, is that you don't talk about things that are uncomfortable. And then you kind of hope they go away. And you're just kind of quiet. But then what we're doing, and families of color have to talk about it to protect their children. And that's the whole thing about equity and equality, that really isn't fair. That they have to be prepared, to go out in the world. So that piece is that's a really European belief system, is that you just kind of don't talk about things that are hard to talk about. And it had to be hard for your mom to talk about that stuff. Because she had probably lived some of the negative experiences. So she had to do that. And people that look like me didn't have to, so you don't assume you don't have to talk about it. But then we are developing mini racists by not saying that's really important. That's our role, is to point things out. So children to become non-racist. First, the accurate knowledge and pride of their own identity. A lot of white people we teach a diversity class here at PCC for early childhood. Students are required to. And one of the things that we do in my class is everybody in the class has to do a cultural presentation. They have to bring in artifacts about their own culture and share it with the rest of the class. And they're powerful. Some of them will do PowerPoints. They'll bring in recipes and food from their families. And the white people always say, I don't have a culture. That's part of the power. I don't have a culture. Because I'm normal. That's another word we need to talk about, is normalcy. It's normal to be white in the United States. That's the norm. And that's very unhealthy.
How do you handle the issue of pride and whiteness?
So they have to honor where they came from. So if they came from, they're all probably European. So Italian families and German, they can celebrate their own German. But the point is, because it's important for the white people to say they have a culture, because that, if they don't have a culture, then that means that we are the dominant people, we don't need a culture. Because we're normal. We're normal, but other people have cultures. And that's why we have to have them come in, and they have a hard time
They
thinking.
have a hard time,
Yeah, trying to find, realize that they have a culture. So they have to celebrate where their roots are from, Germany or France or whatever. But that's interesting, isn't it?
That's interesting even that you say that they have to go back that far, because Americans have a culture. You definitely see it if you move here. Americans have their culture.
Oh,
You know what I mean? So,
Oh, right.
so they could.
And we also say we are all immigrants, unless you're Native American. Every person in this room is an immigrant.
And how many times, if you're not from this country, do people ask you if you celebrate Thanksgiving in your country and things like that? You know,
Yes,
like,
that's
no,
another
not
way you
Thanksgiving.
can bypass that, yes.
I have a question. What's the difference between an immigrant and a citizen?
A citizen is a person who's a citizen of the United States, and some immigrants are citizens and others are not. They haven't gone through the citizenship. If you're born here, you're a citizen.
But you said if you're born here, you're an immigrant, unless you're Native American.
We are from immigrants. My grandfather stowed away on a boat from Sicily. He hid out and was here undocumented for about 15 or 20 years.
Okay,
An
so we're
undocumented
descended from immigrants, but we are not immigrants because
right,
I
we
was
are-
born here.
Right, we are.
So
Yeah.
I thought it was
We're
different.
descended from
Okay.
immigrants. Right, we're from immigrant families. Yeah.
So that can be a way of empathizing and lessening the distance and saying, it's not that
Right.
we're immigrants, it's like, your family is immigrant. My grandpa was immigrant.
That's right.
You
We're
pick
all
on people.
immigrants. We're all descendants from immigrants, unless you're Native American. So this basically is not my country. These are ways children can learn to empathize, to read others' emotions. Know that everyone does not see the world in the same way, and that's how your mom described that so beautifully for you. And your mom did that too. Was able to say, wait a minute, this you can't and saying to your husband, you can't say that. You can't make jokes about other people because of that. That's really powerful. That's the way that we learn. So these are ways children develop.
But yes, do you have good exercises or ideas or activities on how to help kids develop empathy? Like how to help them? Like I've heard things like for an older sibling, talking about what the baby is feeling. It's like, oh, why is the baby crying? I wonder why the baby's crying. It's like, is she hungry? Do you think she's hungry? Do you think we should change her? Like talking about trying to read other people's emotions. Little things like that. Like how do we help kids develop empathy? Like we could talk to them and say, hey, you don't like it when they take the Legos away.
Yeah,
Or,
right.
And we do that just even in the Child Development Center. Oh, look at her face. I don't think she liked when you took it. Her face looks like she's sad now. So to learn to read that, what does that person look like now? If they're crying, and how can we help them?
So you childhood folks know this stuff. And since I don't work in childhood, I don't know how to help
Right,
develop.
so you're verbalizing it for them.
And we also observe them keenly so that when the social situation arises, we address it then. Because then it's within the context of their experience. And it's not just something that's being told by an adult.
And they learn from their own experiences, right? It has to come from the ego, for young children anyway.
Another powerful tool along the same line is reenacting them.
Yeah.
So whether it's puppets or telling stories or reading stories about when children, the story about the kids who are arguing over the blah, blah, blah. And like if they've been arguing over it, they'll sometimes want to read that over and over and over. Like they're really processing it. And then, you can use that as, and then it's not always about them and they're not in trouble or whatever.
Yeah.
We use persona dolls, and what persona dolls are, they're not toys. You give that persona doll a character that So if you have one in the classroom, that persona doll would have a cubby. Their picture would be up on the wall. They would have a family. You know, so when you have that underrepresented